Okay, we're going to start 1.3.4 CAD modeling skills today. And let's go through our goals and our objectives, what we want to, what you need to know once we're finished with this particular unit. We want to be able to correctly build and constrain three-dimensional solid computer model to accurately represent the physical characteristics and behaviors of a design idea or real object. So at this point, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and open Onshape. You open Onshape, and you have two options. You can either open the PLTW curriculum and go to Activity 1.3.4, or if you log into Google Classroom, I have a PDF of this particular unit or chapter uploaded. So what you need to do is, first of all, since we're starting a new unit, you need to go to Onshape, and in Onshape, click Create, choose Folder, give the folder the name 1.3.4, and then click Create. Obviously, I've already created mine, so I'm not going to recreate it. Now, once you've created your folder, click Create, Document, and open the folder 1.3.4 that you just created. Give it the name 1.3.4, it's INSTR, instructions 1 through 13. And then click your Create button. Okay, so we're going to start off in the front view. So in your cube, click Front, create a new sketch, and we're going to create this sketch on the front view. Now I'm going to change to the curriculum, and we're going to start at instruction 4. Instruction 4 says the sketch a 4-inch vertical by 6-inch horizontal rectangle. So I'm going to go back to Onshape, and I'm going to choose the center rectangles tool, and I'm going to point to the origin. Hold down my left mouse button, I'm going to draw a rectangle. Doesn't matter how large or small you draw it, because we're going to change the dimensions anyway. So it says it wanted the horizontal to be 6 inches, and it wanted the vertical or the height to be 4 inches. And I'm going to press Escape to deselect my rectangle tool. Now, instruction 5, well, before we go to instruction 5, it's going to give you some background information about polygons. Polygons are two-dimensional shapes that are defined by a closed loop of line segment. And it goes on to tell you that most CAD programs provide a tool that will quickly create a regular polygon that allows you to input the number of sides of the polygon. Using the polygon tool to create a regular polygon eliminates the need to apply multiple equal constraints to the sides and or angles of the polygon. So now we're going to scroll down here to instruction 5. It gives you an explanation of what we're getting ready to do. It tells you that we're going to add 3 polygons inside your sketched rectangle. So we're going to add a pentagon, a hexagon, and we're going to add a triangle. The first one that they want us to add is a circumscribed pentagon using a radius of 0.35 inches. Now, what I want you to pay attention to is that we're going to add a radius of 0.35 inches. Now, when we get ready to add that, it's not going to give us the option of setting a radius. It's going to give us the option of setting a diameter. So basically, we're going to have to double our radius of 0.35 inches to 0.7 inches. And another thing I want to point out too, it says circumscribed. So the circle is going to be inside of our pentagon. So let's go back to on shape. Now, before we create the pentagon in the upper quadrant of our rectangle that we created, we first going to need to extrude this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to accept the sketch first, and then I'm going to click extrude, and we're going to extrude it 1/4 of an inch. So make sure it says solid, new, and it's going to be blind, and we're going to do 1/4 of an inch. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my rectangle. So now I can go to my isometric view and see that it's extruded. I'm going to go back to front. I'm going to accept that extrude. The next thing I'm going to do is create a new sketch. So now we have sketch 2. All right, so after I create sketch 2, I'm going to change my sketch plane by clicking on my rectangle. So the thing that we're going to do next is going to be on the face of the extrude that we just created. So now I'm going to go to my polygon tool, and to the right of my polygon tool is an arrow. Now it said we're going to create a circumscribed polygon, so I'm going to select circumscribed. And I'm going to draw it. And a pentagon has 5 sides, so I'm going to change it to 5. And my radius, remember, it's at a 0.35 radius. Notice it has our diameter symbol. So we need to double 0.35 and make it 0.7. So we have an accurate diameter. So now, let's look at 5B. It says create an inscribed hexagon using a radius of 0.25. And notice, our circle is outside of the hexagon in our picture. So we're going to follow the same rules. It's giving us the radius of 0.25, so we're going to have to double it to 0.5 because we're going to create a diameter in on shape. So my polygon tool, I'm going to click the arrow to the right of it. I'm going to choose inscribed, and I'm going to create a hexagon. By default, it'll give me the 6 sides unless I move my mouse. And I'm going to change my diameter to 0.5. And we're going to create a triangle down here, and we're going to make sure it's inscribed. The circle is going to be inside the triangle. And we know a triangle has 3 sides. We're not going to worry about the diameter. Now, one of the things I want to point out with the triangle, it says it doesn't talk about the radius, it talks about the side. So it wants an equilateral triangle with a side of 1.25 inches. So what we're going to have to do is go up to our dimension tool, choose a side. So I'm going to click, drag out, and I'm going to change it to 1.25. Now, let's go down to instruction 6. It says use the following geometric dimensional constraints to constrain the polygon. So 6A tells us the center of the pentagon is on a vertical line through the center of the rectangle. So I'm going to go back to on shape, and we're going to use the coincident constraint. And it said it wants the center on a vertical line. So we're going to use the y-axis. So I click the center of the pentagon, and then I click my y-axis. Now, it also says one side of the pentagon is horizontal and located a 1/2 inch above the center point of the rectangle. So we're going to To our constraint tool, we're going to choose the horizontal constraint, and we're going to pick a side. Doesn't matter which side we click, and it's going to make that side horizontal. And it also says it wants um, one side of the pentagon, and one side should be located a half inch above the center point of the rectangle. So I'm going to choose a dimension tool, and I'm going to choose a side. Don't choose the circle. Choose the side of the actual pentagon. Whoops. There we go. And then I'm going to choose my x-axis. Actually, let me do that again. So I'm going to choose that bottom side. And I'm crud, hold up. Messed up. Let me actually zoom it in. There we go. And it wants this side to be a half inch. There you go. All right, next step. 6C. One side of the hexagon is parallel with the 6-inch side of the rectangle for the hexagon. So here's my hexagon. I'm going to choose the parallel constraint. This is a 6-inch side up here. So I'm going to choose the top of my hexagon. And I'm going to choose a 6-inch side to make sure this side of my hexagon is parallel with my 6-inch side of my rectangle. So now I'm going to scroll down some more. It's 6D says the center of the hexagon is coincident with a diagonal of the rectangle. So now, notice there's no diagonal on here. So we have to create a diagonal. So I'm going to choose my line tool. I'm then going to choose my construction tool. And I'm going to draw a construction line. I'm going to click on my origin, and I'm going to click on that corner point of my upper right hand quadrant. And I'm going to press escape to turn off my tool. Now, it wants the center to be coincident with the diagonal. So I'm going to go up to my constraint tool. I'm going to click coincident. I'm now going to click the center of my hexagon, and I'm going to click my diagonal. And 6E tells me the center of the hexagon is a half inch below the top side of the rectangle. So I'm going to choose my dimension tool, and I'm going to choose the top side of my rectangle. And actually, let me do that over, as I believe it said the center. Yeah, the center of the hexagon. Okay. So I'm going to choose the dimension tool again. I'm going to choose excuse me. Yeah, I'm going to choose the dimension tool. Let me move this down so I can see it. There we go. And I'm going to choose the center point of my hexagon. So you guys can see it a little bit better. And I'm going to make it a half inch from the top. And notice as I change the distance from the top, my center point of my hexagon still remained coincident to my diagonal. Now, let's start working on a triangle. F says one vertex of the equilateral triangle is coincident with the corner of the rectangle. So I'm going to choose my coincident tool. And I'm going to choose a vertex of my triangle. And I'm going to choose the bottom corner. um, of my, I'm going to choose the bottom corner of my rectangle. Now, G's tells me the center point of my equilateral triangle is coincident with the diagonal of the rectangle. Now, just like up here, we didn't have a diagonal. We need to create a diagonal in the lower right-hand quadrant. So I'm going to choose my line tool, and I'm going to choose my construction tool again. I'm going to click on my origin, and I'm going to go down to my lower right-hand corner of my lower right-hand quadrant. Okay, so now, coincident, it tells us click the center point of the triangle should be coincident with with my diagonal. So I'm going to choose coincident. There we go. Now I'm then going to choose the center point of my triangle, and then click my diagonal. Let me do that again. I did that backwards. All right. We've gotten through G. Now it's going to give us a note here. It says invisible constraints. Sometimes you will add a constraint automatically without a constraint display. Then I'm going to click my triangle. For example, two opposite sides of a regular hexagon would be parallel by default. Okay, I see what the problem is. If you later try to add the same constraint, this is a teachable moment for you that conflicts with notice my diagonal, you would get an error message. I think everybody in here has had situations just like I with my origin, where what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my diagonal, go back and constrain something or make a change, and it turns everything red. Notice when I error message, have it on the origin, you made a change symbol that was contradictory. So that tells me an automatic it's now constrained to that origin. So you will have to go back and try to check. Now I'm going to go to see where the automatic constraint was created and maybe delete that constraint. Coincident? And I will be honest with you, a lot of times it's easier just to start it over and do the whole process again, rather than trying to figure out where the problem is. Okay, so let's compare the picture that they give us to what we've done. Looks pretty close. Now my dimensions are a little bit different, at least the way I did my dimensions. I mean, I could pull that out like that, so it's a little bit closer to what the book has. So anyway, let's move on. So this area is just talking about patterns. Make sure you go back and read that. It's talking about sketch patterns. This is one way to, instead of recreating our shapes over again, we can use the pattern tool. Okay, so instruction 7 is telling us that we're going to create 3 patterns as shown in figure 6. Here's figure 6. When necessary, estimate the spacing of sketch elements to approximate those shown. Okay, the rectangular pattern of hexagons in figure 6 is missing one element. Okay, and I'm gonna point out that element when we get to it. Now, it's talking about making sure you space correctly. Okay, so look at the spacing here. We have to make sure we space accordingly. So let's go back to unshape, and we're going to start off by creating a linear pattern here. So here's my mouse, and I'm going to go up here to the pattern tool. So I'm going to click the arrow, and I'm going to make sure it says linear pattern. After I select the tool, I'm now going to draw a box around it, and it creates a pattern going to the right. Now, if we compare that to up here, the pattern does go to the right, the pattern goes to the left. So I'm going to click on this arrow, and I'm going to drag to the left. And I'm going to make sure I leave appropriate spacing because that's going to be important. Now, this one over here has 2 rows. The one we created has 1 row. So here's my mouse. I'm going to take the triangle that's up top, and I'm going to create a second row. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to make mine a little bit closer together. About right there. Because we don't want to interfere with the pattern right here that we're going to create. Now notice, look at my mouse. It on the left mouse button has a green check mark. So in order to accept, double click your left check mark, your left mouse button. You may have to click off your rectangle to do it. Next step, we're going to create a circular pattern here. And notice it has 5 pentagons. So click your mouse to go back to Unshape. I'm going to go back up to my pattern tool and I'm going to choose circular pattern. I'm going to follow the same process. I'm just going to draw a box around my pentagon. And it's going to give me 3 in my pattern. Now, the one in the book had 5. So, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change 3 to 5. And then I'm going to click off my rectangle and I'm going to double click. Now, next step, we have a linear pattern of triangles going along that diagonal. We're going to try to get it as close as possible, although it may not be perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to my pattern tool. I'm going to change it to back to linear. Now, I'm just going to click on all 3 of my sides. I'm not going to draw a box around it. And so down here, hold on, give me a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. Don't change this one. This is changing the number of sides. Come down here, change that from 3 to 7 triangles. Now, if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to click undo or redo. You can also use a Control Z to undo. Here's my mouse. Don't click, don't click the arrow. Click this little square, and we want to change the direction. And we want to make it a little bit tighter. So try to get the points, the vertex, as close to the triangle as possible. If it's not perfect, that's fine. And now I'm going to accept. So yours should look similar to this. You want to make sure that these two are not too close. And if you made the mistake of making them too close, just undo it and go back and try to redo it. So next we're going to go ahead and accept the sketch by clicking the green button. All right, the next step, let's go back to our instruction. What we're going to do is we have to go back and, first of all, I forgot one step. We're going to have to remove um, a hexagon. So here's my mouse. I'm going to go back and reopen that sketch. And I'm going to draw a rectangle. So this is a bit too close. There we go. I was able to get the entire hexagon, and I'm going to delete that. Okay, and then I'm going to accept my sketch again. Okay, so the next step is we're going to have to extrude each one of these. Okay, so let's go through it. I'm going to click extrude. I'm going to click remove, and I'm going to change this to through all. And I'm going to click each one of my hexagons. I'm going to click each one of my pentagons. Now I'm going to increase the size of this. Now, make sure you do not extrude this first one. If I was to extrude this first one, it's going to give me an error message. So I'm going to start with the second one in, and I'm now going to skip. I'm going to skip the next one. I'm going to extrude this one, and basically this is going to look like 3 arrows. So every other one. And that's it. So I'm going to accept it. And if I go to isometric view, that's what it should look like. Okay, so the next step is we're going to offset each one of these 3 pentagons. So if you go down to instruction 11B, it says use the offset tool to create 3 new pentagons. Each offset should be 0.1 inch outside of each projected pentagon. And then it says to come back and apply a 0.2 inch fillet to the corners of each outside pentagon. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create a new sketch. I'm going to click on the face of the extrude. And actually, I'm wondering if I should have clicked face of the sketch, but let me try it anyway. So right here is my offset tool. So I'm going to click the arrow. Notice up under the offset tool, you have 2 options. You have offset, and select. Make sure offset is selected. So I'm going to click my first line, and it said 0.1. So I'm going to change it to 0.1. Make sure you're selecting the line. Okay, it looks like I got to click my tool turned off. So I'm going to click it again. Okay, something is not working right. That's not extruded. All right, give me a second here. Okay, so once I set my offset, I'll change that to 0.1. So now I'm gonna go ahead and actually it's giving me an error message. So I'm gonna come over here. Let's see what I did wrong. I wonder if I didn't accept it. Okay, let me do that again. I'm gonna choose offset. Change it to 0.1. Make sure you're doing the sides. There we go. Yeah, okay, so I gotta accept that before. So I'm gonna turn that one off. So I'm gonna double click to accept first, and then I'm gonna go and do my others. There we go. want enter. Then I'm going to double click to accept. Offset tool. Double click. Enter to accept the measurement. Then I'm good. Okay, so you may have to play around with it a little bit. Now it says to come back and apply a fillet. So I'm going to go to a fillet, and the fillet I believe was 0.2 on the corners of each outside pentagon. So going back to on shape. Oops. Let me escape out of that. Go back to my fillet tool. There we go. So I'm double clicking to apply the fillet. And you're going to do that for each one of your pentagons. Click on the corners. Corners of the offset. All right, and then I'm going to accept my sketch. All right, next up, it wants it to extrude these three here. So I'm going to click on my extrude button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in between here to extrude it, all three of these. And I just noticed my setup, it says add. I left it as 1 inch. And notice how mine looks. And let's compare it to that. So I'm going to accept my extrude. Now what I want you to do is I want you to come down to part 1. We're going to create a multi-view drawing. Choose create drawing. I'm going to choose ANSI A. All right, start off with the front view right here. Side view over here. Top view. And of course, in the upper right-hand corner, we want isometric. And remember, best practices, come over here. I'm going to double click the area where I want to put it. I'm going to backspace to delete that information. And I'm going to call it 1.3.4 INSTR 1 through 13. Accept it. Compare yours to mine. Create a screenshot. Upload it to Google Classroom for this assignment.